So this world order that we are living through is extremely problematic, and it couldn't be better than having Mr. Sood here to explain the sorts of great power games which are currently going on. Hello. Starting in 2025 and 2026, the two great powers of the international system, US and China, they've started being two sides of the same coin for India, unfortunately. Um, Both the US and China expose India to intense strategic coercion, Beijing through very direct military sort of incursions along the border, economic leverage via critical supply dependencies, support for Pakistan, while DC, on the other hand, imposes tariffs, visa restrictions, transnational bullying, which undermine India's economic interest and strategic autonomy. So, unfortunately, that's where we are in 2026. So I've read the book, and it's a brilliant book. I'm also a fan of the book. Um, so my first question to you would be that, when you write in your book, you talk about how behind diplomacy or official communiques, there are strategic, very covert operations, espionage, proxy wars, disinformation, economic coercion, and all of these actually shape global influence. So in this changed world order that we are living through right now, what is the central challenge which India faces? Is it the US or is it China? Or is it that G2 which Donald Trump dreams of?
Okay, big question to start with. And after the sublime conversation we had earlier, we're now going into the mundane affairs of the hard nuts and bolts of present day world. Before I answer your question, I think I should make a few things, uh, ex, you know, express myself. You know, the three important things of governance today, international governance, is you must have the strength, you must have the force, and you must have the power. You have these three only if you have the wealth. Okay, that's my first chapter is on control by wealth. You have that, then everything else falls into place because you want to protect that wealth. You want to organize yourself and keep that thing going. China broke the US bastion, as it were, my manufacturing bastion and other things, through economic means. They became the manufacturing hub and moved it away from USA. As long as USA had that, they were the most powerful country. Today you have a country which is not so powerful and the other country is competing. We don't know whether G2 means China first or US first. So that's where the thing is. So the situation is about these two obvious biggest powers in the world today. The other thing is, when I started writing the book, events kept happening rather quickly. First you had Ukraine, then you had Israel, and then you had, now you have Venezuela. I haven't written about Venezuela so much really, except maybe a line or two. I don't know how it would end up. We have today a policy, it seems to be a policy, or if not by design, by accident, by circumstance, to create chaos all over the world. It's economic, it's climate, it is territorial, ideological, religious. All these things have suddenly surged up. Is it by accident or is it by design? Who is organizing all this? We don't know. But the thing is, they also have a president who thinks he can solve everything. And recently he has commented that he said somewhere that Venezuela I will rule for as long as I like. Greenland belongs to me. I will take it when I can. And Europe is finished. It's no good. And I don't think I believe in any international law. I am the law. So that's the man we're going to deal with. And he has. On the other hand, you have the same country with 800 bases, nuclear power, 800 international bases, nuclear power, mighty army, has not really won a war. And to me, the decline of the United States started in August 1945, when they bombarded Nagasaki and Hiroshima with the nuclear bomb, when there was no need to do it to kill 250,000 Japanese civilians. For what? A show of strength to the Soviet Union. So, you've thrown out of the window your morals about morality and everyone is born equal. You can't. There was no need to do this bombing. It was only a show of force at the beginning of Cold War. They got into Vietnam, left ignominiously. They got into Afghanistan, left stealthily by night. And now they left Ukraine to die on its own after having pushed it forward. So, would anyone trust a system that does this? Should I be their friend first, or should I be the Chinese friend first? Should I encourage China to be my friend and I do something for them to be able to get together? I think it is either one of his ministerial officers, State Department or Defense Secretary said, the Western Hemisphere is only ours. Meaning China has no business being in Vienna, in Venezuela, etc., and other places, or Middle East or Africa. So if you're dividing it like this, then you're dividing the world, and I'm saying in return that, all right, the Western Hemisphere is yours and the Eastern is mine. I would want to then think how I can make peace with China. It's my neighbor. I have to live with the neighbor. I can't get away from him. You can't change the location of your neighbor, or you can't change geography. So you got to live there. So can you make peace with China? And I've written in my book, I've ventured writing it. Russia, China, India, Arctic Ocean at the top and the Indian Ocean at the bottom, and these three countries with the largest military power, apart from US, nuclear powers, consumers, producers, and artificial intelligence. Obviously, in this system, China will be number one, I would think, but that's how things could evolve in the future.
So interesting points, but can China be India's friend? What would it take? Should we give up Arunachal, Ladakh? Should they keep arming Pakistan against India? Because 85% of Pakistan's defense comes from China.
No, it's not going to be happening overnight. Nothing will happen overnight. And there are problems between us and the Pakistan, India and China. To me, I don't see any solution with Pakistan. You read what they say, read what their leaders say, proclaim openly on the mic that mine is an Islamic country and jihad against the non-Muslims will continue, and dealing with Kashmir is a jihad. So what do you get then? You get a situation of a chap who's not going to make peace with you. He's waiting for his time. Takiya karte hai na, keep evading, keep, waiting for the right moment, pretending to be different. So that will continue. Now it is in our interest as well to make some arrangement with China. China may feel it is not so much in its interest just now to have what they consider is a potential rival for control of Asia. They would, I don't know, you are the China expert, you would know better, but to me it seems that the Chinese will not give us equality. Well, if you go by that premise, then nothing will happen. Then we are left with two nuclear powers, two inimical powers on both sides. And no country in the world will give you something for nothing.
So can we use a mix and match of, say, what the Chinese do with us, some sort of diplomacy like that, using deception to leverage our interests with the US and leverage our interests with the Chinese wherever there are, if there are any interests with the Chinese?
Of course, that's how it has to be done. I'm not suggesting that we go with the basket to the king in Beijing and say, here, master, you take it and you are the boss, I am your servant. No. You have to play one against the other. I'm not suggesting that we go kowtow to them. What I'm saying is that you have to find a way of rationally dealing with them. We are not going away, and as Meenakshi ji just told us, we are an ancient civilization, we are not going to be written off. Huh? So, hum to baithe hain. So, we have to find a paya media to deal with another country. After all, how long can you go on getting your soldiers killed? How long can you spend so much money and hold back on other things that need for development and construction of the country, of emancipation in various fields? So, it is in our interest, perhaps more than the Chinese interest. Therefore, we have to play the card very carefully. We can do a feint with the Americans, tell them, yeah, we'll do what you want to do. But when have they been of help to us? When has America ever helped us?
So that's the quagmire.
71 याद है? You were probably 71
70
आपको याद
yeah.
नहीं याद है?
याद है सर, 19 से पढ़ा है सर, हिस्ट्री तो पढ़ना
History
पड़ता
पढ़ी
है.
है. अच्छा.
US, China, Pakistan on one side, just the way it was in 2025 as well.
It will continue like that for a long time.
So can we rework our diplomacy models?
No, you
Because
can't.
what has failed?
You cannot stop trying. We cannot walk off the ramp and say, मैं नहीं बात करूँगा. You need them. We have to create a need in them for us. That we should be able to do something that they feel that they cannot do without the Indian help.
So creation of strengths,
Yeah.
dominating the economy and creating some dependencies which the PRC has on India.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go back to, since you had mentioned about the frameworks. So it all seems it's just might is right. And unfortunately, these both in different ways, China and the US, have certain sorts of might, over India at least. And they go and exemplify that might is right. As you said, US has gone into Venezuela. This is actually going back to the colonial framework, wherein you can march into a country and do whatever. Similarly, PRC, it doesn't, say it out loud, but does similar things as the US does. So this might is right, it's going to continue. How does India emerge as the third and the most credible option out of these two, wherein they practice might is right? What can be done? Can we, promote our history better, showcase our foreign policy is not as antagonistic as these two powers is? What can we do over here?
I think maybe what Deng Xiaoping said once.
Hide your powers, bide your time?
Yes. We say, but democracy में क्या होता है? You want to, the politician has to show that I've done this and I can do that, and etc. etc. In an autocratic country, and you can't do that. But actually, this is what you should do. You should be able to hide your strength while you develop it. If you don't do that and you do it, show it prematurely, then they can nip you in the bud and say, and they're doing it. Mind you, they keep trying it. They keep putting obstacles in your way. They suborn your people. Their NGOs are up to no good in the country. And they spend money on all those sorts of things to keep us at each other's throat. I mean, to be a strong nation, you need a strong government. You need a strong party that is handling all that. But you also need a sensible, strong opposition. You know what I mean. The thing is that you read the US press, you read how they talk about things. No American diplomat, no American government person will come to New Delhi and say, my country is rotten, please come and help us, we'll do something for me. They don't do it. But we do it.
Or sign secret MOUs with the party while having skirmishes.
Sorry?
Secret MOUs.
Yes. And what was that sign? I never got to know. Do you?
What's the?
That secret memo that they were signed in 19...
It's super secret. 2008.
Huh?
I wish it was not so secret, but I think
Okay.
there a great job has been done by the PRC and the signing party.
Yeah.
But I completely agree that, as opposed to the US, where on matters of foreign policy or national interest, parties come together because it's national interest first. So I think that's something which is worth emulation. The PRC in China is a communist state, so this question doesn't really arise.
हमारे साथ क्या होता है? What happens to us is we carry our opposition both outside and inside. Inside is okay. Outside, to please be together. Those are otherwise the other country, your best friend will take advantage of you. All they want is control, trade, money. They don't want to rule over you now. That's expensive, undoable. But they want you to be under some control. And how many times has America not imposed sanctions on us and stopped us from developing? If that is what they do to your friend, or they say you are my friend, then I am not going to be able to trust you too long for too many things. How many times has Russia imposed sanctions on us for talking to the Americans, or said so that you have done wrong by going and talking to Putin and not talking to Trump?
Or even Japan. Japan also doesn't do that to us for being friends with Russia.
Yeah.
So talking about control, this thought control, mind control, and we are all living in the internet age, wherein disinformation becomes a very potent tool for spreading narratives. And, these narratives come in from the West. As you mentioned, there are these NGOs and there are thought control processes. Similar ones also come from the East. And we're stuck between the West and the East. A lot of these times, what does happen is that everything which goes against India's national interest, including support for Pakistan, gets pushed out, in the names of having benign outlooks and so on. As you said, Pakistan ke saath nahi ban raha hai. Been there, done that, tried multiple times. But still, the 0.5 front, which exists within India, still continues to dominate. I did track some of the disinformation from China during Operation Sindhu. Well, China was openly supporting the PRC. Now Trump is hosting Asim Munir and all of those things. So the 0.5 front now has support from both the sides, just the way Pakistan does. What do we do over here? We can't be draconian like European countries and shut down the internet, because फिर वो ही हमारे पीछे आएंगे saying backsliding of democracy. So this is like this ultimate mess that we are in. It's like a Chakravyuh. How do we break this? What do we do over here?
Well, I wish I knew the answer honestly, but We have to just get strong, and nobody in the international world respects you if you're not strong. If you're not able to, say when it comes to the crunch, thus far and no further. And we made a beginning with Balakot, and we tried the Uri counter-attack, and then Sindoor. Now these are things that never happened in the past, never happened after November 2008, never happened after 2001, the parliament attack, or the train bombings of 2006 in Mumbai. We just made a little bit of noise and kept quiet and carried on. So if the impression carried is that ye kuch nahi karenge, these chaps will not do anything, carry on, but it's safe, then they'll take you for granted. But if you're going to hit hard where it matters, then they will take you seriously. You are not being taken seriously. You are taken as a soft state. So you have to be a hard state externally and say that my interests are primary. Unke interest imperial hai. The Americans are now displaying their national interest as an imperial interest, or as an imperial interest as a national interest.
Or Chinese ke Tianxia wale hain, Middle Kingdom.
Yes.
That side, two sides of the same coin.
The other is two sides of the same coin. One is considered democracy and the other is not. But the game of power is the same. And they'll continue playing that, and we may be, you're right, we may get caught in the middle. They will. In the past, they have tried to play up the Pakistan card and the China card against us simultaneously when 1971 happened. They continue to do that. And it's no harm. China feels there's no harm in doing it. Once they feel that there is harm in doing it, then they will not do it. Once you can keep doing, taking them on in Ladakh, taking them on in Doklam, that will make a difference. But if you run away and behind soft words and sentences, it won't work. They'll write you off.
So display of the stronger side that India has.
Yeah. We need not say what we've got, हमने ये बना लिया, वो बना लिया, इतनी range हो गई हमारी. Let them find out why. Let them make an effort.
So now clearly there's a new balance of power that is emerging, because Trump wants, the eastern part to be carved out to the PRC. Unfortunately, we are in the east, and we would not ideally want to be subjugated to the Chinese. He wants the Western Hemisphere and so on. He's thrown even Europe under the bus for that.
Yeah,
he wants Greenland.
Yeah.
So, but thanks to all of this, at least now there's one thing which is emerging, that the high-nosed Europeans now would want to engage with India, which is a great thing. There are similarities where there are places we can work in. So some sort of a new balance of power is emerging. I was just listening to some interviews in the morning. Some European leaders are also saying that they need to speak to Putin, because now Trump is no longer, a very rational person. So what is this new balance of power in the next 3 years, hopefully when Trump is out? What will this new balance of power look like?
It might change even sooner. If Trump loses the congressional vote at the end of the year, he'll become, what's the word? He'll become...
Impeached? No, not impeached.
No, not impeached. I mean, he'll become powerless.
Right.
They will stop listening to him as they were listening pehle se. So things might change sooner. And I think the Europeans have also learned their lesson. They will want to make independent arrangements with the country that is growing the fastest in the world. And we are a democracy, and we will remain one. So we have all these things going in our favor. Why should we not make use of them? Why should we not get closer to the Europeans, get closer to get a status in Latin America? Well, they may object, so we'll forget it. Africa, presence there. Maybe we can do some better deals in the Middle East without losing Israel. There are a lot of options available if we play it consistently and with having worked out, if not this, then what? If it goes foul, then what? I mean, you have to work out, start. In my trade, we used to start with the worst case option, you know. Everything is going to go wrong and they'll come attacking you and they'll subvert you, etc., etc. The diplomat thinks the other way. Everything is fine and so on. Then you work out slowly, things could go wrong and the Chinese counter could be this. And we have to then find a via media to work out a plan of action which suits the country.
Completely agree. So, India also is doing quite a bit in South Asia. In fact, in South Asia, the rivalry is not between the US and the PRC, it's between India and the PRC. And over the years, over the last 10 to 12 years, India's project completion rates, be it in Sri Lanka or Nepal for that matter, have been much better than these Chinese BRI projects. Yet, the perception building hasn't happened, be it in Nepal, be it in Sri Lanka, be it in Maldives. India is not just the first port of call whenever they are in distress, but also for all sorts of development, India has been the friend in need, and China is not. But somehow the advertising and the narrative creation has been done better. Again, this is like a double whammy or a double-edged sword. If we do project all the things which we've done, and we've done quite a lot, including in Sri Lanka and all these other countries, in fact, even in Bangladesh, some BRI projects were handed over to India before this whole drama actually started. But somehow the public perception hasn't happened. If we try to create it, the narratives come again, India bully, big brother, and so on. If we don't do,
They
then
don't
also
care.
it's not fair.
They don't care
Yeah,
about
it's not
this.
fair. So it's a double-edged sword.
What
do we do?
This small country syndrome will always continue. We will have to live this kind of a situation. What I think we should keep in mind or convey to them that this is the red line. Beyond this is my interest, not to misbehave as it were. But if you want to criticize me, go ahead. If you want to come outside the embassy and shout slogans, I don't mind, you'll do it. But don't do that. If you do that, we will take suitable action. And a display now and then, can help you drive that thing home. कि अगर तुम उनके साथ, if you sign a deal with you, then we'll pull out of this one.
So what is this goal of this, ultimate goal of this great power competition? Because the goal doesn't seem to be just military or just economic superiority, but I think it is to enable a long-term domination and control. But
Spot on.
what's the goal, and what's this ultimate goal that's going on between these two and the great power competition? And what do we do over here?
Great power competition is about, it's total domination they seek. Because I'm better than you, and I'm more deserving than you, whatever reason they give. And how do we get out of this, or how do we take advantage of this?
How do we take advantage of this? Because get out to nahi hoga.
Get out, they'll squeeze us. You have to take advantage of it item-wise, situation-wise. You have to take advantage of an event or a new thrust that is coming up. I can't pinpoint and say where, but let's say Taiwan. The Americans want you to be on their side. They want you to be more serious about Quad. The Chinese don't like it, obviously. So what is the price each is going to pay us? What is it you have to offer to me that I should give up America on this issue? What is it that America will do for me, and the Chinese will be upset or will score over them. I'm sure this has been thought of in the government circles, worked out, and maybe they have a plan. Maybe they're still working at it. But we think with your mind and say, okay,
So I'll,
who needs us more at what time? And what's the price?
so I'll shift to another T, which China doesn't really like. And given that, we were talking about civilization and
Yeah,
connect
Tibet, yeah.
Tibet. And of course, China is not really happy with the fact that they are also trying to appropriate Buddhism by calling it Chinese Buddhism, promoting the narrative that India's Buddhism is not India's,
Yeah.
whereas it is well known there are deep connects between Hinduism and Buddhism and so on. What should be the next steps for us on Buddhism or the reincarnation when the unfortunate event of His Holiness passes away? Because this leads also into politics, and when China gets enraged, it also means territorial aggression. So what could be the sort of planning that we do over here? It's every question is just so tricky.
Yeah, we are definitely going to have the next Dalai Lama is going to be born in Tibet. It'll be Chinese. Yeah? It won't be something the Dalai Lama and his group outside of China will select and impose. So the two groups will clash. How much support the Americans will give to the external Dalai Lama, I don't know. I don't think so.
Even I don't think so. After
No.
Trump, I really have lost faith.
No, they won't. So, it could be the end of the story, quite
Or
frankly.
could it be a chance for India to step up, also leverage its civilizational narrative and the fact that we do the right? Could that be leveraged also?
If we have that card to play and we worked it out what it means, supposing we do that and they have an arrangement with Pakistan to create trouble here while they do something awful in Walong and Tawang. We have to work that out. It's not going to be just you put out a flag and say, no, he is the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, too many problems to navigate. So just one question, there is a Western decline and there is an Eastern ascent. Can this ascent be India's ascent?
It has to be. There is no if or but. If we don't ascend now, we'll never ascend. We have the demography on our side. We have the youth that is on our side. We're already growing at 7.4% in the midst of the world, which is growing at far less rate. We have miles to go. There's no doubt about it. But if we do not take this opportunity, if we do not adopt policies that are economic policies that are favoring the growth, then we have lost it. And countries in the West, USA included, the corporate sector grew first. It was the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the J.P. Morgan, the Rothschilds, they put the countries together, Britain, and they took slaves from US, from Africa to US. They took labor from India to the Indies. So they grew at a time when there was no opposition to them. They were the masters of the sea as soon as they entered. They knocked out Spanish, German, French, all opposition in the colonial sectors all over the world, the Brits had. USA took over from them, bit by bit. They took over the Middle East, they took over Africa, they took over the world. So now they are the new imperial masters. They don't want to say it. They don't want to call themselves an empire because it's a bad word. But they are. Only they don't colonize and sit there in that country. They sit there through globalization.
That's completely true. And since I come from the land of the Tatas, Tatanagar, Jamshedpur, Steel City of India, I completely agree and understand. But, you know, sir, the problem also is that the moment that our corporate sector starts growing or doing great things, be it the Tatas, Ambanis, Adanis, Reliance, these shrill voices will come in saying capitalism.
Yeah.
These narratives come both from China and from the PRC. Both from the PRC and the US, you know, so typical mind control. So now we have a demographic dividend. All of us live on the internet. For the youth, or say even for, say, somewhere in the middle, people like us, what do we really do? How do we move away from these narratives which have been fed to generations to the use and abuse of academic freedom, journalistic freedom, and so on? What would be your message for us?
I think the message is that we have, Meenakshi told us about our past, our ancient glorious past. We come from that genre, that is our belonging. That we have to face all these oppositions, regardless of what happens. You know, it's not China and Pakistan and US alone who can do it. It is the enemy within that does it. Your enemy enters only when somebody opens the gates. है ना? तो हमारे यहाँ भी we have that situation. We think that whatever, if we Ambani or Adani are evil because somebody has done that survey in USA and therefore it's evil, and Ambani has done something else which is evil, so they are playing on your weaknesses. Their story right, their media observations like New York Times or Washington Post. But we also must remember, while they do all that, how many people read these papers? Common people, they don't read those papers. It's only when they get represented here and are shown off that people get to know, America to aise soch raha tha. After all, the entire Ukraine war up till now has been seen to be fought on Indian papers through Western eyes. You look at the international page, all reports have come from CNN, BBC, AFP, Reuters, these agencies, NYT and Washington, all of them write, you take out snippets and put it there. So we think the Americans are winning, the Ukrainians are winning, they're not. We have to build our own storyline, which will take a long time. 90% of American media is owned by the private sector. And out of that, I think 90% or 80% of that is in 6 hands. That is the control they have. And they call it a free democracy.
Yeah. Completely agree. In fact, before the invasion of Venezuela, these Washington Post and NYT knew. And there's a report on that this attack, this is an attack on democracy. That's going to happen. But they kept, they have
not criticized it.
If that were to happen in India, well, that's another story altogether.
If you were to try it in Bangladesh, half our population will be behaving like that.
And I know, it's just that maybe there is a consciousness at least about these sorts of things now, and maybe that's the first step forward. Questions? I think I got so swayed by asking sir questions because I was trying to educate my own self that I went on, but I'm really sorry for that. So can we open the floor to questions? Maybe we can take 3 at a time and then sir can answer.
Is this Fastest 1 hour I've spent. I can't see you.
You want me? Okay. So, Mr. Vikram Sood, he is currently associated with the ORF as well, and in the past he has been the head of our intelligence services, our RNAW, which is why getting insights from him has been, I think, nothing short of this surreal experience. He's written this book called Great Power Games: From Western Decline to Eastern Ascent, which is why I was trying to formulate my questions.
Advertising myself.
Which is why I was formulating the questions on both the great powers that we have and the soup that we keep finding ourselves in. I hope I could do mini justice to your introduction. Since he is the Vikram Sood, he does not need more introduction than this.
Thank you.
And I'll quickly take 3 questions. Please raise your hand and introduce yourself. Yeah, okay, fantastic.
Can you come this
Yes.
side? I can't see you. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. I am Akash. My question is that everybody has been saying that there is a decline in Western Empire, which is kind of true. But if you see overall, the axis of evil, Iran, China, North Korea, Russia, they have been losing allies, but they aren't been able to do anything. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia kind of gave up on Armenia, and Armenia has been a lost cause for them. Even Iran, there have been protests right now. It's going on. It's in the news. But it's not like China has openly come up and support the regime. It's like there is some kind of, hesitance from them. Even when US invaded Venezuela, apart from the statements, the great China's last warning, there hasn't been anything much that they have been doing militarily. Is it that China is hesitant to do something, or is it just that they are still not at that level that they can support any of their allies like the Soviet Union once used to do? That is my question.
Actually,
So can we take...
you should be able to answer that better. But you want to take another question after
So
that?
can we take one more so that it's easy?
Okay.
One more, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Skanda. I'm a law student, and I've been following diplomacy for a quite good 2-3 years now. And I've noticed that whenever someone needs help, we are their best friend. But whenever we need help, we don't find a best friend. How's that working
Yeah.
out for us?
That's what she was talking about a little while ago, about our friendly neighbors. They expect a lot from us when when they are down in the dumps. When we help them, then they forget about it. And then they go back to the other side.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So could you please...
The first question was about why doesn't China, why don't they react the way they should? They don't have the means to react yet. And the Chinese, I don't think, will get into any of these messes that the Americans do. They are much better organized. They say, it's your problem, go and sort it out yourself. I'm not going to mess around there. And Russians won't do it. They had only one interest in Ukraine, and they stuck to it and succeeded. At least in my judgment, they have succeeded in keeping. That has led to the fall of the EU and the fall of the NATO. What more does Russia want? So they have succeeded. Americans have lost out there, and the Chinese will not militarily engaged anywhere. They'll do pinpricks where it is possible, i.e. in India. They might even try in Japan or Korea, but I doubt that. But India is more likely. They're not doing anything drastic in Taiwan either. So it's okay, you can call them paper tigers, but they're not paper tigers really. They have the best machinery. They may not have the best, the battle-trained forces, because they haven't fought wars. They haven't been involved in counterinsurgencies like we have been, like our forces have been. So, in that sense, our Our army, navy and air force are better equipped and better trained than they were in 1962 or 71 or 2001. So there's a big difference. And the attitude of the present government is also different. That makes a lot of difference to what a country does in international affairs.
Okay.
Hello, sir. I'm Anvit, a medical student. I'm a big fan of your work. I've seen a lot of your podcasts.
Yeah.
And my question is about intelligence services, sir. So it's very clear now that whenever someone opposes or doesn't agree with the US, they conduct regime operations. May it be in Bangladesh when Awami League didn't agree for a military base for US in one of its islands. There's a student protest, and the regime the student regime took over, and the US placed Muhammad Yunus, who was in good ties with the US part, to rule over for some interim government. Same goes with Venezuela and Nepal. And in India also, it's pretty clear, like we can make an assumption looking at their cohort operations like CANRC. They took an opportunity of CANRC, and there's not like clear proof, but we can make out that these were cohort operations by looking at the student activist, what's his name? I don't remember his name. He helped and conducted the JNU riots and all, and was later arrested. Like they don't actually do a regime operation, but they fund operations like student protests. Thankfully, Indian army is very strong. Like they can't conduct regime operations, but they fund these strikes and all. But why doesn't India do such cohort operations in USA? Because even USA has a lot of problems out there. Why doesn't Indian intelligence services or the operators out there conduct such operations in cohort operations in USA?
Why do you assume that it should be done? And
Because
why do you assume
we should be a fox
why
with a
do you
fox,
assume
sir.
it is not being done?
Because it's
Since
not
it's
clear.
covert, maybe it is not out there in the open. Unknown men and women.
Unknown assailants.
Madam, you were saying it, I haven't said a word.
Should we take a... Okay, great question though. So can we take one more?
Yeah.
We'll take one more, please.
Sir, how Arunachal Pradesh is important for China? Because it is one of the biggest roadblock in the Indo-China relationship. What's your take on that?
It's a question of honor, I presume. It's a thing to needle India with all the time. Keep it as a hammer on your head.
If I can just
So
add
that's-
one part
yeah.
to this after you say.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yes,
I'll
I've
add
finished
one
that.
part.
This is an article.
Since till 2008, China wasn't acting so shrill on Arunachal Pradesh. But after its power grew after the Beijing Olympics, its cries on Arunachal Pradesh have just grown shriller. This term called Zhangnan or South China didn't really come up in their public discourse till before 2008. The fact is that around 2008, 2006-07, huge mineral deposits were also discovered in Arunachal Pradesh. Then there are water resources. China is traditionally a dry state. They would love to have all sorts of water, minerals, natural resources, which will further their economic rise, which is currently stalling at the moment. I'm pretty sure you must have heard about this humongous dam which is being planned in the upper reaches of the Yarlung Tsangpo in Tibet, which comes down into India as Arunachal Pradesh. Every time there are heavy mining activities inside of Tibet, the waters downstream have blackened in the Siang River tributary, Brahmaputra River in Arunachal Pradesh. It's there in public evidence as well. It's happened in 2017, 2019, 2022 and 2023. Every time it gets blackened, it coincides with a heavy uptick of mining activities inside of Tibet. So it's a long-term strategy, a long-term gain. China is not going to move back on Arunachal Pradesh. They tie it with the Tibet question also, calling it Southern Tibet. And since we were talking about deception, what they've done around Dalai Lama's 90th birthday is that they took a bunch of our journalists, credible journalists, took them in the name of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra and made them publicize the term Xizang for Tibet. What does that mean? The moment you obliterate the term Tibet and use the term Xizang, Xi in Chinese means Western, Zhang means treasure trove. You normalize Tibet being called Xizang, south to it is Zhangnan or India's Arunachal Pradesh. So that sort of strategic thinking unfortunately doesn't exist everywhere. So it's a long-term game plan. It's not moving back anytime soon. Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
butted
Thank
in.
you. Good. Over.
Can we take last or no? No? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for being so patient and for all the brilliant engagements. And truly, sir, I've been a huge fan of yours forever, since my student days. It's truly an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for an absorbing conversation.
ಇದೀಗ ನಮ್ಮ ವಕ್ತಾರರಾದ ಶ್ರೀ ವಿಕ್ರಮ್ ಸೂದ್ ಮತ್ತು ಸಮನ್ವಯಕಾರರಾದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ರೀಪರ್ಣ ಪಾಠಕ್ ರವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಮರಣಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರವೀಶ್ ಪಡುಮಲೆ ದೈವ ನರ್ತಕರು ಮತ್ತು ಜಾನಪದ ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸರು ಉಜಿರೆ ಇವರಲ್ಲಿ ವಿನಂತಿ.